Who's that? Commander Claw. Who's bad? Commander Claw.
Welcome back to another episode of Breaking Brews. I'm your host, Commander Claw, and if this is your first time visiting the channel, thank you for taking a chance on this video. Hopefully you'll stick around or come back to see other videos because I got more commanders out there. But without further ado, we are on the Final Fantasy wave train right now. This hype train is real. These cards, this booster set, this thing is sold out. So we got to talk about the commanders. Sin Spira's Punishment is a Sultai commander. Its ability is literally random. It makes token copies, and it has the Titan ability. If you don't know what the Titan ability is, it's pretty much an ET ability. ETB. Let me explain it like this. If your creature says you get this effect when it enters or attacks, yeah, that is the Titan abilities from the Titans. Any like Sun Titan, Primeval Titan, it says when it enters or attacks. That is like the Titan ability. So without further ado, let's talk about Sin Spira's Punishment and why you want to play with this commander and what build themes work with it. So for a hefty 7 mana for black, green, and a blue 7/7 body Leviathan Avatar Flyer. So this is a 7/7 flyer that your opponents probably don't have anything to block with. It says whenever Sin enters or attacks, exile a permanent card from your graveyard at random. That's random. Then create a tap token that's a copy of that card. If the exile card is a land card, repeat this process. This is going to be some crazy shenanigans. So that means whatever card is in your graveyard that's a permanent can come back as a token copy. So those powerful enchantments that you want to put in your deck is back on the battlefield. Sagas back on the battlefield. Creatures back on the battlefield. Artifacts back on the battlefield. And if it's a land, you make a copy of the land, then you repeat this process again. So it's like mana ramp, this is like a really good late game card. Yeah. This is one of my theories. I need to make a video on. The more land you have, or the more ways you can double up the mana, the more spells you can play on a turn, and that's how a lot of players win games. It really is. It really is. Feel free to let me know in the comment section if you disagree. And with that, I'll piggyback onto a Lands Matter theme with Sin Spira's Punishment. So what's going to make Sin Spira's Punishment a really good commander? If you do the Lands Matters things, you need to put more lands into play. You need to put more lands into play, put lands into the graveyard, and landfall triggers are going to do exceptionally well. So Assy Tyrant of Gyre Strait for 4, green and a blue, 5/5 Body Serpent. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Then it has landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, you may draw a card. So if you have these paired together and a land is coming in as a copy of itself, that is a landfall trigger. Easy as that. And you get to draw a card. So great synergy here. Next up, we have Taval the Balanced Scale from the Tarkir Dragon Storm. For Sultai colors in 1, 4/4 Body Spirit Dragon Flyer. Whenever it attacks, mill 3 cards. We want to do that. Self-mill, put cards in our graveyard for Sin Spira. Then you may return a land card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Okay. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 2/2 Black Zombie Druid creature token. So, this just self-mills. Okay. You get to put a land from your graveyard back onto the battlefield tapped. Then you trigger its token generator ability. This card just gives you value when it's paired with Sin Spirit. That's it, straight value. Probably you could use Taval as like a value engine and for infinite combos in Sin Spirit. So it's like a win con if you add this in the 99 of Sin Spira's Punishment. That's the way I look at it. Moving on to doubling up those tokens. So we got Parallel Lives. Y'all know this card is not budget friendly. So if you don't have it, proxy it. Why not? Anyway, for 3 and a green, it's an enchantment. It says an effect will put one or more tokens onto the battlefield under your control. It puts twice that many of those tokens onto the battlefield instead. Since Spira is making a token copy of whatever exile permanent when it enters or attacks. So why not make 2 of them? Next up, we got Adrix and Nev Twincasters for 2 green and a blue, 2/2 body, Merfolk Wizard. They have Ward 2. Then they say if one or more tokens will be created under your control, twice that many of those tokens are created instead. Cool, cool, cool. And what's cool about Sin Spira's ability, if one of these cards, spells, permanents are in your graveyard, you can make a copy of it with Sin Spira if you randomly chose it. So Sin Spira is like a what's the word? She's able to expedite the game by putting a token copy of something, whether you've been self-milling yourself. So your early mid game, you're actually doing what your deck wants to do. Then even late game, she's able to make copies and bring back missing pieces of combos that you probably added into that deck at a later time. So for 7 mana, that's why it costs 7 mana, because if you play this early, you could really get the game going. Get the game going and end the game quickly, honestly. All right, moving on to my favorite card from Golgari. So I love this card because it is in my Myco Tyrant deck and it goes ham. For 4 green and a black, it's an enchantment that says whenever Deadbridge Chant enters, mill 10 cards. Just look at the art. The art looks fire. So you mill 10 cards. What happens after that? At the beginning of your upkeep, choose a card at random in your graveyard. Random thing again. If it's a creature card, put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put it into your hand. So literally, on your upkeep, you get to put a creature back onto the battlefield or put a card. It could be any card. It could be an instant sorcery, enchantment, planeswalker, artifact back into your hand. And you mill 10 cards. So this just speeds up the process. If you're new to Magic, self-milling is not a bad thing. Self-milling is actually the Golgari Sultai version of aggro. It's just risky because opponents can have effects that say exile your graveyard, then you're just screwed. That's just how it goes. But do not underestimate the speed of a self-mill deck. They actually go faster, and you actually have more options compared to an aggro player, which they're usually limited by the cards in their hand, and their card draw is just not as effective. But Sultai, if you love value, if you love recursion, and you love just putting and seeing options, Sultai is a very good color theme. Moving on to what they look like together. Ooh-wee, look at that together. If you had these 2 cards on the battlefield at the same time, you are wreaking havoc. Wreaking havoc. You have a 7/7 flyer that your opponents probably don't have an answer to. You get the attack trigger and the ETB trigger. Okay? You put 10 cards in your graveyard from Deadbridge Chant. This goes crazy. Also, you're in Sultai color, so don't be afraid of seeing this 7 mana commander and a 6 CMC enchantment. You better have ramp spells and double mana in this deck. And also, there's a creature that reduces the cost of creatures with flying that goes well with Sin Spira's punishment. I always say that wrong. Honestly, I'm new. I'm kind of like new to Final Fantasy. I've known the game for a long time, but I never really deep dived into it, so I don't know the characters that well. I'm sure you viewers do. So let me know if Sin Spira is one of the top characters in Final Fantasy. Moving on to cards you may have missed. Look, self-milling is a thing. Self-milling is effective. It's effective and it's mandatory in Sultai colors. Cemetery Tampering for 2 and a black is an enchantment. Hideaway 5. I like this ability a lot because you literally look at your top 5 cards and you get to choose one of them. You have to exile them and you just put one of those cards away. Then you put the rest of the cards at the bottom of your library. Why this is good? You for 3 mana, you look at the top 5 cards. Then its ability says at the beginning of your upkeep, you may mill 3 cards. Then if there are 20 more cards in your graveyard, you may play the exile card without paying its mana cost. That is just effective. It's got a nice tempo and pace as you play this game. You kind of can play this early or even mid, and you just win. And you don't know what your top 5 cards could be. It could be a missing combo piece. And when it's in exile, your opponents can't touch it. They can't touch it. They have no answer. They can't get rid of it. So it's a win-win. Very good card. Moving on to the summary. Thank you for watching this episode of Breaking Brews. Sin Spira's punishment is a Leviathan avatar 7/7 flyer. That is a powerful creature. That's a very powerful creature. And its Titan ability it can't be underestimated. It can't. You create token copies of any permanents, and this is in Sultai colors. This definitely goes well with Madrotha the Gravetide. So yeah, y'all players have fun with this bad boy. Let me know in the comments below if I'm missing anything or any other card suggestions y'all have for it. Feel free to help out the community. Peace.